Hello and welcome to Nationwide on the network service of the NTA. We are glad to have you join us. I'm Hawa Salihu Adama. Let's start with the latest on COVID-19. The NCDC has confirmed 457 new cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria. The new cases recorded from 21 states indicate that Lagos has the highest number of new infections, with 137 new cases, followed by the Federal Capital Territory with 76, Plateau 40 new cases, Rivers 35, Enugu 34, Oyo 25, Abia 23, while Delta has 12 new cases. Other states include Edo and Ebonyi with 11 each. Cross River and Kwara states have 10 each. Kaduna has 9, Anambra 7, Ogun 5, Imo and Bauchi states have 3 new cases each. Osun and Nasarawa have 2 each, while Kano and Ekiti states have 1 new case each. Nigeria now has 44,890 confirmed cases, out of which 32,165 have been successfully treated and discharged, while 927 unfortunately have died of the virus. Meanwhile, the Nigeria Governors Forum is adopting far-reaching measures to ensure schools comply with COVID-19 safety protocols for returning students preparing for exiting examinations. This was part of resolutions at the 14th teleconference on COVID-19 to mitigate impacts of the coronavirus pandemic in the country. Let's now join Abubakar Usman Akwanga for details.
The Governors Forum is putting finishing touches across schools in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Education to ensure safety of exiting students and contain the spread of the coronavirus pandemic. The forum is concerned about the continued impasse between state governments and resident doctors and advised states to close ranks in resolving the pressing issues in the interest of the nation's health sector. The 36 state governors condemned the attack on Borno State Governor's convoy and promised to present its position to the presidency for further review of the security situation in the country. The NGF engaged the National Economic Council over the suspension of counterpart requirement to access the Universal Basic Education Fund and other national intervention budgets and statutory levies. The forum received update from Aliko Dangote on behalf of Coalition Against COVID-19 on the flag off and distribution of palliatives to Borno, Edo, Enugu and Kano states and other parts of the country to reach more vulnerable population. The annual assessment performance for states' financial transparency, accountability and sustainability to drive implementation components for 2019 was also deliberated upon. In Abuja, Abubakar Usman Akwanga, NTA News.
And still on the security of Nigerians, the federal government says it intends to examine every possible option in the development and distribution of a vaccine against the coronavirus disease, emphasizing that the health and safety of Nigerians is a priority. State House correspondent Jide Onifade reports.
In a meeting held virtually with representatives of the BNT 162 COVID-19 vaccine candidate on the progress of the vaccine development around the world, including Africa, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says the federal government will continue to engage and intend to look at every possible option from all manufacturers of good vaccine, stating that the government wants to do the very best for the people in this regard. Several questions about the COVID-19 vaccine candidate asked, including how quickly can Nigeria get the vaccine once it's safely ready. Also, the Vice President wants the country to be first considered in the distribution of the COVID-19 vaccine when it's eventually ready. Spokesperson for the promoters of the BNT 162 vaccine candidate, Subar Olayinka, says although the vaccine trials are not going on in Nigeria currently, but in parts of the African continent, it would be entering the third phase, having concluded the first two phases. Health Minister Osagie Hanire notes that the federal government would consider quality, appropriate volume, and how well and quick a vaccine can be delivered to Nigeria in deciding which manufacturer to make the supply. In the State House, Jide Onifade, NTA News.
And more COVID-19 survivors and medical experts are calling for additional investments in tertiary institutions and clinical trials to help with research into the deadly virus, especially its biological aspects, to curtail spread of the disease. This is the fallout of discussions on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria as survivors share their experiences. Butua Mila monitored the program.
I remember when I came in, I could hardly help myself walk. I was wheeled into one of the wards, and within that period, I could really not help myself do anything apart from go to the bathroom and back. Most of the people that actually passed they came in really bad.
Yomi Koka, sharing his experience after recovering from COVID-19 in Abuja. An experience which sounds similar to that of Mohammed Babandede, Comptroller General of Nigerian Immigration Service, who also survived COVID-19. Both maintain that COVID-19 is real and applaud the commitment of health workers at the isolation centers.
I'm glad to say the workers were very helpful, not knowing even who I was. They were very friendly. Not only that, they were encouraging.
Amid a global race for COVID-19 vaccine, the guests give insight into latest observation about the behavior of the global pandemic.
What we are now focusing on in the pre-asymptomatic and asymptomatic, then you have early form of the disease, then you have the mild form of the disease, you have the severe form of the disease, then you have the intensive care unit. Each of these stages should be treated differently. But when the disease came on to us, we were mixing up things.
Some people would catch the disease, become infected, they will be asymptomatic and will remain asymptomatic, just like I. Some people will become infected, will be asymptomatic for a few days, and then if they do not have baseline immunity or their body cannot cope with it, or they have a high viral load from whatever reason, they will progress to having symptoms.
They warn that it will take adherence to health advisory and a unity of purpose to defeat the virus. In Abuja, Butua Mila, NTA News.
And away from COVID-19, in a bid to ameliorate the difficulties faced by internally displaced persons in the sub-region, the Northeast Development Commission has flagged off the sharing of relief materials to IDPs and other flood victims in Yola. Simon Asher reports that this is to reduce their hardship.
About 2,018 people are currently living in the Malkoe Interdisplaced Persons Camp, Yola.
They may be victims of circumstances, but through faith, they now live as one family. And this sharing of relief materials by the Northeast Development Commission will not only better their lot, but enhance their socio-economic well-being.
Aisha Mustafa, one of the people living in the camp, while narrating their conditions, says they find it difficult to feed themselves, as 12 people now share one bag of rice, which is given to them after every 3 months. Items shared are 225 kg bags of rice, 170 25 kg bags of maize flour, 2,010 bags of salt, 500 pieces of wrappers, and 40 bags of 50 kg bags of sugar, among others.
We also have personal hygiene items which we have brought to help in the fight against COVID-19.
Similar items were also shared to the victims of flood in Yola South local government area of Adamawa State. In Yola, Simon Asher, NTA News.
The presidency has debunked a fake news that repentant Boko Haram terrorists are being incorporated into the military. Kenneth Nanim has the reaction of the presidency on the matter.
Into a statement from the presidency, there is also no plan for such absorption, and none of the 601 former Boko Haram members who voluntarily laid down their arms and graduated from the federal government's de-radicalization and rehabilitation program is going into the military, even as it is the fourth of such graduations. The presidency reassures the public that the de-radicalization, rehabilitation and reintegration of violent extremists, codenamed Operation Safe Corridor, follows an established example from countries with similar experiences, and it is supported academically and materially by the European and the United Nations. The presidency also says the lead agency for the implementation of the program in Gombe State is the International Organization for Migration, a leading intergovernment organization represented in Nigeria. The presidency points out that the program does not have a place for hard-boiled, ideological, hardened terrorists, adding that it only admits, after careful scrutiny, of repentant fighters that were captured and forced to bear arms. The presidency further advises that such certified repentant Boko Haram members be accepted in their communities and not suffer rejection. According to the presidency, the Buhari administration is a responsible one and conscious of its duty to the state, society, and to the victims of terror, as well as those who inflicted pains and losses to the people.
And the Cross River State government is appealing for support in the realization of its superhighway and Bakassi deep sea port project, which will serve as the fastest route to exporting the abundant solid mineral resources in the north. Governor Ben Ayade stated this while addressing newsmen in Calabar as the private sector continues to show interest in the investment of projects in the state. Paul Abel has more.
Nigeria is blessed with arable land for agriculture and with lots of solid mineral resources in the country, and if well harnessed, Nigeria will eliminate extreme poverty obvious in parts of the country. The belief here is that for the North to get the best from these resources, there must be a direct connection and access to a maritime domain, and that is where the 245-kilometer superhighway and Bakassi deep sea port come in. Hence, the plea to the North to join in appealing to President Muhammadu Buhari to recognize the value of exports of agriculture and solid mineral resources.
History has been so kind to you, and God has been very fair to you. It is time for you to use this opportunity and end the pains and sorrow of young people of Nigeria. God has given you the resources in the solid minerals in the north and in the oil in the south. With a superhighway linking these two, you can deliver, within these remaining 3 years that you've got, a magic that can change the course of the black man.
The governor emphasized that the strength of the Naira will continue to depreciate except Nigeria becomes an export-oriented country and recalibrates the value of the Naira. He also used the opportunity to proclaim a new policy for all Cross River State indigents who will be completing the NYSC scheme with no immediate employment to be engaged under the Agricultural Beneficiary Program of the state. In Calabar, Paul Abel, NTA News.
And from Calabar, we take you to Lagos, where Michael is on standby with more reports. Michael.
Thank you, Howell. As the partial closure of the third Belam Bridge continues, water transportation is witnessing an upsurge in operations as more passengers are making use of this mode of transportation to navigate the ever-busy Lagos roads. Dotun Ogunyemi has the reports.
Don't mistake this for a marketplace. The busy nature of this jetty located at CMS is a reflection of increased passenger activities across all jetties in Lagos since the commencement of repair works on the third mainland bridge. Shobo Abayomi has found a new love commuting on water.
A trip that would normally, take me 4 or 5 hours, and now that the third mainland bridge is closed, that might even take more than 4 or 5 hours. But now I can actually get to my destination in 1 hour 30 minutes, less than 1 hour 30 minutes.
Abayomi is one of many passengers who would like to see better development in this sector. However, operators like Ayomikun are counting their gains, but the boom comes with its own challenges.
What we discovered along the line was that some operators are not actually captured in our nets as a member of our association. That's a major challenge we are having on our waterways. So we discovered that most of them are the people that actually fall victim of these mishaps sometimes because of they are not being regulated properly, not being informed properly.
Between passenger and operator, what is the regulatory agency saddled with the task of ensuring safety for all doing anew?
Most recalcitrant boat operators are being sanctioned. If you find out that your boat is or not up to standard, you'll be prescribed from operating the waterways until you come back for re-inspection.
With a recent incident of boat mishap last week at Kirikiri, which sadly claimed 10 lives, there has been renewed clamor for effective monitoring and enforcement of the inland waterways. In Lagos, Dotun Ogunyemi, NTA News.
Still on transportation, prelude to awarding projects that will boost its mandate of expanding rail infrastructure, the Nigerian Railway Corporation is evaluating contract documents in adherence to the Procurement Acts. The process was done in strict compliance with COVID-19 guidelines. Despite the giant stride recorded at using the rail to open up communities for investment opportunities, the federal government is still committed to harnessing the vast potential the rail subsector has to offer. This mandate explains why this meeting is opening up pre-qualification documents as substantiated by bidders for the award of 2020 capital projects in the subsector. The projects under 3 categories covers infrastructure, works, and consultancy.
So we have things like maintenance of our locomotives, procurement of spare parts, insurance of some of our new locomotives, and all these things are critical to ensure that we continue to provide the quality service that we are providing to Nigerians.
The exercise is not just a check for the eligibility criteria, but seeks authentication with relevant agencies in compliance with due process.
For instance, the IRR will authenticate through Bureau of Public Procurement and so on and so forth. So, and there are about just over 700 documents we've received today. Normally when we do this, the whole bidders come, but we've put some measures in place to make sure that it's transparent and to make sure that the bidders get a feel for what we are doing at some point.
The fulfillment of this open exercise will translate to more projects, which will improve the quality of lives of Nigerians. Time now for some messages. The news continues with Howell in Abuja shortly after this break.
ICPC and NTA say you can help Nigeria to flatten the curve on COVID-19, just as you can help flatten the curve on corruption. Follow transparency, accountability, and integrity just as you follow health guidelines. Stay home with integrity and maintain your distance from corruption, just as you stay away from COVID-19 by maintaining social distance. Report every act of corruption to ICPC just as you report COVID-19 to NCDC. Stay away from corruption, stay safe from COVID-19. Report any act of corruption to ICPC on toll-free number 0800-2255-4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
You can follow us on all our social media platforms: Facebook at NTA Network News, Instagram at NTA Network, Twitter at NTA News Now, YouTube at NTA News Online, or visit www.nta.ng. For live streaming, visit www.nta.ng/live. Now, you can stay updated on the go, be it on your TV, iPhone, laptop, or iPad, or download the NTA mobile application from your Play Store or App Store. NTA, you can beat the rich.
Thanks for rejoining us. We'll now take you straight to our Ibadan Network Center, where Lanre is on standby with more reports. Hello, Lanre.
Hello, Hawa, and welcome to Ibadan. To ease the traffic burden as well as reduce deficit of infrastructure in Niger State, an 8.5 billion naira road project has been flagged off. Ayomiku Ajibola reports that the road will link the new Oyo-Ife dual carriageway.
The construction of the 21-kilometer road is aimed at eliminating congestion around the area. It is also aimed at improving the capacity of the road, resulting in greater efficiency with reducing travel time and vehicle operating costs. Works to be executed on the road include clearing, earthworks, provision of hydraulic structure, line drains, culverts, and two-span bridge.
When we heard that this road would be constructed, it was a great news to us in all this environment. And I believe also it will add more value to this area.
With questions on why the road costs more per kilometer than Monia Ishenyi Road, Governor Seyi Makinde used the occasion to readdress the criticism that trailed the cost of the contracts.
One of the roads may appear longer, but when you visit the site, you will find that the airport Ajia Road has more hydraulic structures.
The construction of the project is expected to last 12 months. In Ibadan, Ayomiku Achibola, NTA News.
Adequate measures have been put in place by schools in Kwara State for the resumption of SS3 students for academic activities ahead of the West African Senior Certificate Examination, SSCE. Damilola Balogun-Elebio reports that there is high compliance with safety protocols in schools visited.
All schools visited in Ilorin, students were ushered into the premises with strict adherence to COVID-19 safety protocols.
So we are putting all things that we think is necessary to make them succeed. Of course, by God's grace, they will succeed.
We are starting the revision right now, but from whom I know my students, the serious students, we don't have problem with the students, and we know they are prepared, and we will intensify our own revision too. In fact, Saturday is going to be included in our own revision classes in St. Patrick's.
We have made timetable for this 2 weeks revision. So we made the timetable in such a way that we have 6 hours that will stretch 1 hour per teacher per subject. When the teacher is leaving, another staff is coming in, and we make sure that they are keeping the social distance.
Anoluwapo Adeshino is an SSS3 student of His Grace College, Saboke, Ilorin.
We've already started class. We did 3 subjects today, and we'll still do more in the coming days.
It is expected that the present level of compliance to safety protocols is sustained by both students and officials during and after the examinations for the safety of all. Damilola Balogun-Elebio, NTA News.
It's back to Awa in Abuja for the continuation of Nationwide.
Many thanks to you, Lanre. And moving on here to security matters, the Imo State Police Command has reaffirmed its commitment to rid the state of all forms of criminality. The Commissioner, Imo State Police Command, Isaac Akim Moyede, made this known while parading 31 suspects, including a traditional ruler, arrested for various crimes. Miriam Vincent Oko reports.
A traditional ruler in Awara, Ohajegbema local government area of Imo State, is one of the 31 suspects paraded by the Imo State Police Command for alleged involvement in kidnapping. He was identified by the gang members as the one who supplies them with a vehicle for their operation and was given the sum of 3 million naira when the vehicle was lost in the course of one of their operations.
You came and took my vehicle to somewhere. To do this kidnapping.
Are you aware of it?
I'm not aware.
Also paraded is a pastor alleged to have raped an 11-year-old daughter of a fellow pastor. The Commissioner of Police, Imo State Command, Isaac Akimoyede, says his resolve is to take the fight against criminality to the nooks and crannies of the state, stressing that the suspects will be charged to court immediately after investigation.
The breakthrough was achieved as a result of concerted efforts by the officers and men of the command. I want to appeal to members of the public to continue to furnish police with credible information concerning criminals and criminalities in the communities.
In Owerri, Marian Vincent Oko, NTA News.
Festivities such as the recent Eid al-Kabir celebration come and go, leaving people with memories, especially sweet ones. Unfortunately, it was not to be for the people of Rijau, as they mourn 7 ladies who died in a hairdressing salon on the eve of the Eid al-Kabir. Mokhtar Abubakar Wowo visited Rijau, about 300 kilometers from Mina, the Niger state capital, and filed in this report.
Is the headquarters of Rijau local government area of Niger State. This is the saloon in which the victims of the generator fume, including the hairdresser, have said to have locked themselves up the fateful night they lost their lives to suffocation. The lifeless bodies of the 7 victims, who were young girls aged between 13 and 18, except for the hairdresser, who was a mother carrying 5 months pregnancy, were covered in the morning of Eid al-Kabir day.
I enter a shop, I shake anybody. I see that 7 people, they die. I look out, I see my 2 daughters, they die here.
The General Hospital Tunga Magajia confirms the incident.
In fact, even before they brought them, the community were already causing problems. They didn't even want the police to bring them to the hospital in the first instance. So when they brought them, we certified them dead, and they took them for burial.
They say there are some signs of struggling in the face of this female, which they don't know the cause of those marks.
A traditional ruler of the community refutes the insinuation that it took his intervention to calm some youths who insisted the chairman must see the 2 survivors before taking them to the hospital.
We are not concluding that whether the generator caused the death. We have to wait for medical reports before we can confirm on that. But by and large, as it stands, investigation is ongoing. As soon as we got the medical details, then we can be able to link what really happened.
NTA shall bring you updates as issues unfold. Mokhtar Abubakar, NTA News.
A very sad development indeed. And from Mina, we take you to Benin, where Agatha is waiting with more reports. Agatha, you're on.
Thank you, Hawa. A warm welcome to Benin. The entrance to Edo State House of Assembly in Benin has been under barricades since the early hours of today. Speaker of the House, Francis Okiye, says the action is to resist alleged plans by the impeached Deputy Speaker, Yekini Idiaye, to activate a takeover of the Assembly. Obehi Otoba Presai reports.
We sincerely apologize. We cannot continue with our Benin Network Center for now. But moving on, there are indications that immediate action is needed to save some of the federal highways being threatened by torrential rains in Jigawa State. On Tuesday morning, hundreds of motorists were stranded as the Gweram Bridge linking Jigawa and Kano states was submerged. Over now to Ibrahim Sani for a situation report.
Motorists flying Gweram Basirka Road, which connects Jigawa State with northeastern states of Bauchi, Gombe, Taraba and Adamawa, among other states, could not forget it so easily. The flood waters, which covers the entire road, affecting traffic and other vehicular movement. The flood water, which lasted for hours, have eventually receded, leaving behind several damages on the road, with motorists compelled to using one lane for safety.
This road that links to Gombe, Taraba, Adamawa, up to our neighboring countries, Cameroon. So we are still appealing that the government is possible what is good.
Even farmlands were not spared by the flood, as hundreds of hectares of land under cultivation have been submerged. The state government has, while sympathizing with the victims, pledged to build additional culverts in addition to devising ways to control the dangerous erosion.
So inshallah, the government of Jigawa State will definitely do something about this road, and inshallah we will bring a lasting solution, inshallah.
A team of experts led by Jigawa State Commissioner of Works has since inspected the affected areas with a view to ascertaining the level of damage for necessary intervention.
Really, a lot of efforts have been committed in the construction of roads like this one by both the federal and state governments. But there is need to take more measures as the rains continue to wreak havoc. A stitch in time, they say, saves nine. You say, Ibrahim Sani, NTA News.
Have you ever heard the statement from waste to wealth? However, some waste can lead one to diseases, environmental hazards, and even death if not properly managed. That's why, to sustain safe environments, especially in this wet season, Nigerians are strongly advised to adopt integrated waste management approach in the handling of their daily waste products. Environmental experts advocate enlightenment programs to provide households and industries with guidelines for proper waste management. Ifoma Ihoje will take up the matter from here.
As long as man exists, waste will remain a part of people's lives. While some produce more waste than others, everybody produces it every day as leftover foods, empty containers and packs, as well as other unwanted materials. Studies have shown that the higher the population, the rate of economic development and urbanization, the greater the volume of unwanted materials, hence the increasing tons of waste generated across the nation. In Akwa Ibom State, for instance, the government, through the Waste Management Agency, is always on its toes to ensure the evacuation of the heaps of waste generated daily in the state capital and its environs.
The government has been trying, especially in areas of evacuation of waste, but we're having problems with what happens to the waste after it has been evacuated.
We are not doing well at all when it comes to waste management. A scenario in the market, if it rains, the women will be coming out with their brooms and sweeping the waste into the drainage.
Environment experts prescribe the introduction of integrated waste management strategy that will encourage the concept of turning waste to wealth, while the environment remains safe for everyone.
Provide the ambient, environmental factors, it will decompose. They can then use that to produce organic manure.
International best practices, there's a way they build dump sites now. And since we are looking at recycling too, we have discussed with certain companies. There's a company that's supposed to change waste to power, to energy. There's another company that's coming waste to fertilizer and all that.
As government and related agencies strive to improve on their integrated waste management strategies, environmental experts have called on all Nigerians to develop environmentally responsible ways of handling and disposing waste for a safe and healthy environment. In Uyo, the Akwa Ibom State capital, Ifoma Ihoje, NTA News.
Strategic to air operations across Nigeria, the Air Combat Training Group, Kainji, is being prepared to receive an August visitor to further enhance these operations. Defense correspondent Najatu Tijani fills us in on the August visitor.
NAV 455, the Alpha jet, reactivated in-country in March 2020, displaying its prowess to welcome the Chief of the Air Staff on an operational visit to the 407 Air Combat Training Group, Kainji. But there is another much-awaited visitor being expected.
The base is being prepared to receive the A-29 fighter aircraft, also known as the Super Tucano, expected to be a game changer in air combat operations.
The Chief of the Air Staff is here to inspect the various ongoing projects, including upgrading of tech areas for indigenous innovations to enhance periodic depot maintenance of the aircraft and construction of residential quarters for the flight crew and technicians expected to escort the aircraft. Some media outlets erroneously reported that the jets had arrived. However, the Air Chief says to expect more than one Super Tucano sometime in 2021.
We are talking of 12 additional aircraft. That's a huge number. It will certainly make a lot of difference. We are satisfied with the level of work going on, our reactivation efforts. We are particularly happy that we have technicians there that are doing a lot of work.
Meanwhile, the Nigerian Air Force has commenced airlifting of medical supplies and other consumables procured by the West African Health Organization to 14 member countries of the ECOWAS, including Nigeria, to curtail the spread of COVID-19. Najatu Tijani, NTA News.
Very well, Naja. Thank you very much. And still on security, course 2 participants of the Nigerian Army Resource Center has, in the last 47 weeks, been thoroughly drilled and trained to make a difference in their future field of endeavor. Francis Fom, who was at the virtual graduation ceremony, reports that the course is designed to enhance the competencies and skills of top military officers and their counterparts in strategic agencies of government and information implementation and evaluation of policies, as well as management of human and material resources.
We utilize the knowledge of the Ghana's army force and build a relationship with the force for this particular course.
The Strategic Management and Policy Study course covers 5 thematic areas, including the fundamentals of public policy making, analysis, constructive engagement, and national development, among others. The Nigerian Army Resource Center was established in November 2015 with the mandate of providing sound-based solutions to defense and security issues while enhancing human capital development. The Nigeria Immigration Service has made a commitment to become more technology-driven in its service to the nation. Comptroller General of Immigration, Muhammad Babadede, gave the indication while addressing senior officers in the commemoration of the 57th anniversary of the service in Abuja. Victor Azu reports.
The Nigeria Immigration Service has made conscious efforts to digitize its operations. Migrant e-registration, passport application data processing system, and the migration information and data analysis system, and the list is endless. But as it appeared, coronavirus reared its devastating head and disrupted provision of physical services. Regardless, the high point of these efforts is the technology building, envisaged to be completed later this year. The project is expected to accommodate the ICT database of the Nigeria Immigration Service, with huge implications for Nigeria's internal security. Little wonder that at the commemoration of the service's 57th anniversary, the Comptroller General of Immigration, Muhammad Babandede, considers the future of the service to be digital.
Our vision is to put all our data, all our intelligence in one place, analyze and share with other law enforcement as the need may be. This building will give a remote relationship between us other law enforcement and the world. In this building, we can connect with all the Interpol countries. We can connect with all other law enforcement, real-time online, without being there. So the future is here.
The Comptroller General of Immigration used the platform to also tee off decoration exercise for promoted senior officers, urging them to redouble their efforts.
Do not relax. We must justify this deserved promotion.
The promoted officers are 29 Assistant Comptrollers General and 71 Comptrollers. In Abuja, Victor Azu, NTA News.
Solid minerals, oil and gas, which make up the extractive industry, will in the nearest future occupy a top position in Nigeria's economy if legislators adopt the toolkit developed for members to ensure effective legislation on the extractive industry in Nigeria. This was made known at a virtual validation of the toolkit put together by the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies and the Nigerian Natural Resources Charter for the Nigerian Parliament. John Yaku has more.
Africa and indeed Nigeria are blessed with deposits of natural resources such as oil and gas, as well as solid minerals that, if properly managed, could alleviate poverty and spur economic growth and social development. However, without proper legislation for an enabling environment for sustainable and accountable management of the sectors, these resources cannot transform into the desired economic development for the people. This underpins the collaboration between the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies and the Nigerian Natural Resources Charter to develop a toolkit for members of the National Assembly on effective legislation of the extractive industry in Nigeria.
The toolkit principally draws from the Natural Resource Charter that reflect global good practices of parliamentary oversight of the extractive industries, including what Parliament can do together with the executive.
Fall in oil prices, increased borrowing, stop all economic activities have all put tremendous pressure on the Naira and, of course, the Nigerian economy. To recover, it is imperative that legislative reforms are expedient.
Stakeholders at the validation agreed on the value of the toolkit, which they describe as instrument for development.
I believe this provides a very good opportunity for the National Assembly to manage the industry, to make the laws, the policies, and at the same time regulate and have a very good oversight.
We are happy that this is happening, and we extend our goodwill, our congratulations and commendation to the two organizations that is on top of this.
The final validated document of the toolkit at this meeting will be transmitted to the leadership of the National Assembly for consideration. In Abuja, John Yaku, NTA News.
And still staying with the National Assembly, the House of Representatives Committee on Public Accounts has written to the presidency to compel the Central Bank of Nigeria and other agencies to appear before it within 7 days to answer questions surrounding sale of government-landed property. Chairman of the committee, Wale Oke, directed the clerk to forward a letter to that effect when 6 out of 9 agencies invited to appear before it failed to honor the invitation. John Yaku has more.
The agencies are the Central Bank of Nigeria, Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, Nigerian Ports Authority, Bureau of Public Enterprise, National Emergency Management Agency, and the National OSP Detection Agency. They are to brief the committee on revenues generated through the sale of government-landed properties as queried by the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation.
We insist that these agencies we have listed to appear before us and make submissions so that we can really understand PIC holistically. Because if we are taking PIC now, and in their submission, some agencies also participated in the sale of assets, and they are not the Auditor General, and they have not appeared, or they refuse to appear to take a position. Then how would you be able to appreciate the totality of what PIC is saying? So if we all agree, we must step PIC down until these other agencies appear before us and testify.
Those that appeared were the Transmission Company of Nigeria, Nigeria Electricity Liability Management Company, and the Presidential Implementation Committee on the Sale of Government Landed Property. In Abuja, John Yaku, NTA News.
And it's time to take another break. More reports shortly.
She cries. She cries in anguish and in pain. She bears the scourge of her grief. She toils in vain for justice and succumbs to silence. He gloats over his malady. Like a beast, he pounces with no remorse. Her cry means nothing. Her pain feeds her shame. Like an orphan, she's left to grieve in solitude. But no more will she cry in vain. Her adversaries will henceforth bear the brunt of their cruelty. Rape is evil. Rape is a plague, a pandemic of monumental consequences. We must unite and kick it out of our society.
Connect with NTA and stand against rape and rapists. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
When you hear that sound, you know that Nigeria's most authentic newscast is about to begin. NTA Network News, breaking the news for over 40 years.
It's good to have you rejoin us, and I understand Agatha in Benin is now ready for us. Agatha.
Thank you, Hawa, for rejoining us. Now, earlier we told you that the entrance to Edo State House of Assembly in Benin has been under barricades since the early hours of today. And Speaker of the House, Francis Okiye, says the action is to resist alleged plans by the impeached Deputy Speaker, Yekini Diaye, to activate a takeover of the Assembly. Obayo Toba Presai gives details.
The crowd of PDP protesters not only barricaded the entrance to the complex, but also took over major sections of the road, resulting in a chaotic situation for commuters. Very few of the protesters were observed using their face masks. The physical distancing directive was also not complied with. The speaker says the protest this morning is to flout plans by the impeached deputy speaker and other APC members-elect to take over the assembly complex.
We got a hit yesterday, and we did address the world on the tension of the APC and their leadership. Because of the rumor we're hearing, we came around this and we found that our party supporters are already all over the place.
The impeached Deputy Speaker, Yekini Diaye, in a telephone interview, denies the allegation.
No, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not aware of what he's saying. To come and take over the assembly with who now? So I don't know what he's saying.
Meanwhile, the APC State Media Campaign Council, in a statement signed by the chairman, John Mayaki, says the party has no hand in the blockade of the assembly. Rather, he says it is an orchestration by the PDP out of fear that the House, which he says now comprises of only 5 lawmakers, will be overturned and replaced with more representatives. The resolution to impeach the Deputy Speaker was adopted few days after he declared his support for the APC governorship candidate, Pastor Sage Ize-Iyamu. At the time of filing this report, the protest was ongoing. Security operatives are, however, on ground to keep the peace. In Benin, Obehio Toba Presai, NTA News.
And the report just coming in indicates that elsewhere, 12 elected members of the Edo State House of Assembly, not initially sworn in, have now been sworn in at an emergency plenary. Details will come subsequently. Still talking political matters, the APC in the state is accusing Governor Godwin Obaseki of neglecting governance. This was at a news briefing in Benin.
The APC says the briefing is an important platform to remind the governor that the suspension of governance and leadership of the state is inexcusable and unacceptable, not even for electoral purposes. He cited the unheeded Nema flooding as an example. He said politics must not be prioritized over and above the lives of the citizens. The party adds that it is pertinent to remind the governor of the Giligili Seaport project, the industrial park overtaken by weeds, the absence of modular refinery, the Edo Specialist Hospital, and Benin Water Storm project. On security, the party wants a boost for the police.
Governance in Edo State has been abandoned, and Edo State citizens are bearing the brunt of this governance nosedive and total abandonment. We responsibly and timeously raising alarm on the genuineness of heeding the warnings and objurgations of NEMA and commencing immediate steps into protecting the lives and properties of our people in the identified flood-prone areas.
A senior special assistant to the governor on public affairs, however, says there is no lapse in Governor Obaseki's administration as he continues to monitor the affairs of the state, even as he campaigns for his re-election.
The state governor has a responsive mechanism in place that is attending to the needs, yearnings, and aspirations of all Edo people. So whether it's campaigning Edo North or Edo South or Edo Central, governance is being attended to.
In Benin, Obehi Otuba Presai, NTA News.
And that's it from here. Hawa, it's now back to you.
Very well, Agatha. Nigerians must rise above selfish interest and uphold the right ethical values that will advance growth and development. This is the position of guests on NTA's current affairs program, Moment for Thought, stressing that national interest should be key for Nigerians.
You'll find that you have created a new culture, which is often referred as the white-collar criminal culture.
Yes.
Because what it has brought is a different sense of values, which contradicts with the cultural and traditional values. The major reason why the growth that you witness has not translated into development, as I've defined it, is corruption. And I will tell you so that is why we have said that if Nigeria is to develop, there must be a successful fight against corruption.
The program comes up tonight at 12 midnight on the network service of the NTA. Sports now. UEFA Champions League returns on Friday. Ayodeji Makinde brings us more on Sports Update.
Former head coach of Nigeria's Super Eagles, Joe Bonfrey, has described the national team as a brand that must be guarded with every sense of jealousy. The Dutch tactician who guided Nigeria to Atlanta 1996 Olympics gold charges stakeholders on teamwork in order to harness the nation's football prowess.
With increasing number of young and athletic Nigerian players who are doing well in European clubs, the Nigerian national football can become very strong again and win trophies like before.
Meanwhile, action returns in the UEFA Champions League with the remaining round of 16 second leg fixtures set to be decided. On Friday, Serie A champions Juventus welcome Lyon to Allianz Stadium while Real Madrid play Manchester City at the Etihad. And on Saturday, Chelsea will be in Germany for their clash against Bundesliga champions Bayern Munich, while Napoli visits Barcelona at the Nou Camp in Spain. Arrangements are in top gear for a successful staging of Maiden Northern Nigeria Local Government Games 2020. Organizers who are working in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports Development say the project will be up and running post-COVID-19.
We'll scout them and train them, send some of them abroad, and within a couple of years, we believe we will now be having stretchers, pillars, stars, from the north in sports.
Kano State is expected to host the maiden edition of the Games. In Abuja, Ayodeji, Makinde, NTA News.
And next is a quick check on Friday's weather picture. And that's Nationwide today. We thank you for watching. Remember, it's now a priority to observe the COVID-19 safety protocol. Good evening.
NTA, you can't beat the rich.
She cries. She cries in anguish and in pain. She bears the scourge of her grief. She toils in vain for justice and succumbs to silence. He gloats over his malady. Like a beast, he pounces with no remorse. Her cry means nothing. Her pain feeds her shame. Like an orphan, she's left to grieve in solitude. But no more will she cry in vain. Her adversaries will henceforth bear the brunt of their cruelty. Rape is evil. Rape is a plague, a pandemic of monumental consequences. We must unite and kick it out of our society.
Connect with NTA and stand against rape and rapists. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Parenting can be quite difficult these days.
Papa, this one you're doing is not good though. I will not hesitate to withdraw her from that school.
It's even harder for young parents when they might feel the least prepared.
I will never forgive you if my daughter does not come back home safe and sound.
So this now too is my fault.
But with the right help, it can be the most fulfilling task in the world.
You will be working in a household as a governess.
This is Miss Nena, our new governess.
And you are?
Kofi Mensah, the chef.
Which chef?
I really would want you to come to the UK with me.
That sounds quite inviting.
Auntie, no, they use this kind jazz they play. Oh. All these spirits they walk around us. Oh.
And a big family can stay a happy family. The Brabinton Family. Drama for the whole family. Now showing.
NTA Sports 24, where sports thrive.
You can follow us on all our social media platforms: Facebook at NTA Network News, Instagram at NTA Network, Twitter at NTA News Now, YouTube at NTA News Online, or visit www.nta.ng. For live streaming, visit www.nta.ng/live. Now, you can stay updated on the go, be it on your TV, iPhone, laptop, or iPad, or download the NTA mobile application from your Play Store or App Store. NTA, you can beat the rich.
This is the network service of the NTA.
This is the network service of the NTA. We now join our outside broadcast crew for a live telecast. Please stay tuned.
Responses will flow from there. So at this point, let me please plead with you that we do not wish to be cut off from the live broadcast because of the news belt. So we'll roll the program very smoothly and quickly. When you come up to ask your questions, make it concise, make it precise, so that the answers can come early. May I now invite the chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 to the podium to present his remarks.
Members of the Presidential Task Force, distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the press, our sincere apologies again for starting this briefing late. We had quite a lot of issues to deliberate upon. However, I welcome you all to the national briefing by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 for Thursday, 6th of August, 2020. For the past 9 weeks, precisely from 2nd of June, 2020, we've been running the phase 2 of the eased lockdown, which has witnessed 2 extensions. These extensions were necessitated by the observed lack of compliance with prescribed measures, dangers associated with community-spread infections, and the need to strengthen critical areas of the response strategy for effectiveness. Prior to the Salah break, the Presidential Task Force informed the nation that the 6th interim report and the recommendations would be submitted to Mr. President for his consideration and approval. I'm therefore pleased to inform you that the PTF team met with the President on Wednesday, 5th August 2020, to appraise him of the situation on COVID-19 and the next steps. Suffice it to state that the recommendations made to the President have been born out of diligent evaluation of the situation in Nigeria, as well as regional and global experiences. Our considerations were also guided by 3 thematic areas, namely 1, movement, 2, industry and labor, and 3, community activities. The Presidential Task Force, within the same period of reporting, prioritized the following areas of major focus for the extended second phase of the response: using data and science to inform decision-making, improving the efficiency of the response activities, emphasizing personal responsibility of individuals in preventing transmission, and supporting the healthcare system and strengthening the adoption of non-pharmaceutical interventions. But before I unveil the details of the next steps in our national response, the Presidential Task Force finds it necessary to take you through a review of our situation. Domestically, in the last month, the number of states with over 1,000 confirmed cases increased from 4 to 10 and the Federal Capital Territory. While Nigeria has conducted 43% more tests in July than was done in June, the positivity rate has also decreased, showing the progress made in access to testing. Likewise, our case management efforts have also seen a reduction in the fatality rate from 1.9% in June. Community transmission is increasing, as reflected in the fact that, as of today, 536 local government areas out of the 774, equivalent to 69% of the total, have reported a COVID-19 case. Figure 1 below, which they would show up on the screen there, depicts the EP curve of COVID-19 in Nigeria, with slight declines from July 28, 2020, while Figure 2, which is the map of Nigeria and differentiates, shows the confirmed cases by states and approximate numbers. The Presidential Task Force has used this data to help guide response and inform the policies it has recommended. We have also found it necessary to bring you a month-on-month comparative statistics for similar dates, 4th July and 4th August, to enable you capture the new developments worldwide, on the continent of Africa, and in Nigeria. Though the pictures are not very sharp and you can't see the figures from there, but by the time you get a copy of my speech, you will see the glaring figures. But permit me to draw your attention to the global cases. As of 4th of July, 2020, the global figure stood at 10.9 million cases globally. As of 4th of August, that figure jumped exponentially to 18.142 million. In terms of absolute figure, we recorded an increase of 7.220 million in just 1 month globally, representing 66% of the infections. On the continent of Africa, as of 4th July 2020, the recorded cases stood at 342,415,000. On the 4th of August, on the African continent, the number had jumped to 825,272 cases. In terms of absolute figure, we have on record 482,857 cases in just 1 month. And in terms of percentage, that percentage stood at 141% in terms of growth. In our country, Nigeria, as of 4th of July 2020, our statistics shows that we had 28,167 cases. By the 4th of August 2020, we have recorded, in terms of number of cases, 44,433 cases. In absolute figures, within a period of 1 month, we recorded 16,266 cases, representing 58%. And in the same vein, if you look at the percentages, the figures of fatalities, globally, on the same day, 4th July, the record shows 523,011 fatalities. On the 4th of August, the figure had risen to 691,013 fatalities. In absolute figures, we recorded fatalities in 1 month globally of 168,002 persons dead, representing 32%. Similarly, on the African continent, in terms of fatalities, in the month of July 4th, the record shows 6,628 fatalities. In the month of August, that figure jumped to 14,139 fatalities. And in terms of absolute figures, the record shows 7,511 in just 1 month, representing, in terms of percentage growth, 113%. In our country, Nigeria, 4th of July, fatalities stood at 643, while on the 4th of August, that figure rose to 910. In terms of figures, absolute figures, we recorded in just this 1 month, 276 deaths, representing 44%. I have taken time to give you this picture so that we have an appreciation of the magnitude of the ravaging effect of COVID-19 globally, on the African continent, and in our country, Nigeria. The world continues to be confronted with the reality of the new normal foisted on all humanity by the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. The virulence and novelty of the virus has made it compelling for humanity to work together, to put in place strategies to contain its spread and ensure that the delicate balance between dealing with the pandemic as a public health concern and guaranteeing livelihood is maintained. The details of the above data guided our national response and informed the policies put in place, which played key roles in recording the following successes. 1, use of data and technology in improving surveillance, contact tracing, and testing efforts. And 2, significantly increasing testing capacity with the activation of 60 laboratories in 31 states and the Federal Capital Territory, as well as the accreditation of several private health laboratories into the system of the testing, doubling the number of tests taken within a month from 130,000 to 304,221. And 4, increase risk awareness through collaboration with traditional, religious, and community leaders, as well as other partners. 5, ensured longer collaboration and partnership with the legislature. And 6, successfully evacuation of over 8,000 stranded Nigerians abroad at minimal cost to the government. Continued strong coordination with the private sector to mobilize resources for the response. And 8, mobilize more partner support for the response at the state level. 9, join the global community in the critical trials for vaccine ahead of a potential mass deployment. And 10, laying the foundation for homegrown research activities for a domestic cure. And 11, develop guidelines to support the safe reopening of other sectors of the economy. And 12, providing technical support for the development of incident action plans, IAPs, for the states. And 13, holding regular consultation with the state governors, commissioners for health, and other related sectors. Our assessment has also revealed that the foregoing accomplishments and plans notwithstanding, the following challenges continue to pose considerable concern. And the first of such challenges is the increased non-compliance with pharmaceutical prevention measures. The second being lack of enforcement of necessary guidelines issued to preserve lives. And the third, the insufficient engagement by some states with the national response, and a lingering concern about the gap between identified cases and the actual burden of the disease. And lastly, apathy, fatigue, and disbelief, combining to challenge public entitlement, compliance, and behavior change. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to address these challenges and continue improving our national response to eventually win the fight against the pandemic, the Presidential Task Force reached the conclusion that for Nigeria, it is important to ensure that restrictions are not completely relaxed in order to control and abate further community transmission. It is also important that at this community transmission phase of the pandemic, subnational governments set up to take more responsibilities by owning the response and the process. To sustain gains already made, therefore, the Presidential Task Force recommended to the President the further retention of the current phase of the response with minor changes or adjustments to address economic, socio-political, and health concerns. These measures are further outlined in the guidelines, which the National Coordinator will elaborate more extensively on. It is, however, important to inform you that major changes being proposed are aimed at achieving the following. gradual reopening of international air flights within established parameters, reopening of rail transportation within established parameters, which was undertaken on the 29th of July 2020, and also continuation of the permit granted to exit classes to resume ahead of examinations, particularly the West African examinations and other examinations as provided for by the Federal Ministry of Education, and now further allowing civil servants from grade level 12 to resume work who would provide essential services for the workings of the public sector. And finally, opening recreational parks for supervised exercises. After due consideration of the recommendations, Mr. President has approved the following: maintaining the current phase of the national response to COVID-19 for another 4 weeks in line with the modifications reflected in the report, the 6th interim report we submitted, which the national coordinator will give you further details on. B, partnering with states and local governments to improve community sensitization and engagement to the COVID-19 response. And C, mandating state authorities and the Federal Capital Territory to enforce non-pharmaceutical guidelines, primarily the use of face masks in public appearances and places. D, encouraging state governments to collaborate with the local government authorities to intensify necessary measures such as contact tracing, grassroots mobilization, and risk communication. And finally, E, strengthening of collaboration with other mandate groups at the federal, state levels to harmonize the country's COVID-19 response on the short, medium, and long-term basis. Before I round up, I wish to remind all Nigerians that this fight is for every one of us, and that you must take responsibility for your actions or inactions. Disbelief and skepticism will further complicate our situation, and we should not stigmatize anyone infected. Our communities should own the response and continue to educate our citizens about the need to keep themselves safe and to take personal responsibility for their actions. It is now my privilege to invite the National Coordinator to provide the details of the revised guidelines. I thank you so much for your kind attention, and have a good evening.
The Chairman of the Presidential Task Force, Honorable Ministers, members of the PTF, gentlemen of the press, good evening. So as you're aware, we are currently in phase 2 of the East lockdown, which started on the 1st of June 2020. Since then, we've made several minor adjustments to accommodate for the gradual reopening of the economy, as well as to address key challenges in the response. We have made an assessment of the current phase, and as mentioned by the chairman, we have made recommendations to Mr. President to retain the current phase of the response, with minor changes to address some of the challenges we see on the economic, socio-political, and health front. The assessment that we did has revealed that there's a lot of non-compliance with our non-pharmaceutical interventions, a lot of disbelief, skepticism, negativity with regards to the COVID pandemic. It is very clear that we need to have additional interventions to improve compliance with our non-pharmaceutical measures and our protocols. We also need to strengthen the engagement of communities and local authorities in prevention campaigns, as well as expand on the current rollout of precision-based control measures in high-burden local governments in the country. Further to this, and effective from early morning hours of today, the measures put in place for the current phase 2 of the ease lockdown shall be maintained while addressing some specific aspects. These include maintaining the current nationwide curfew from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., maintaining the restrictions on mass gatherings with specific emphasis on protecting vulnerable populations. We continue to urge persons above the age of 60, those that have underlying medical illnesses such as diabetes and cardiovascular disease, and those that have immunosuppression to please stay at home and limit their interaction with the general public. We also strongly recommend, and this has been accepted, that government meetings continue to be virtual as much as possible, while maintaining restrictions on physical meetings, including official trips, oversight visits, and board meetings until further notice. The restrictions in the education and entertainment sector, as well as for other activities that attract mass gatherings, such as operations of markets and worship centers, remain. In particular, I would like to talk more about the general movement aspects. In terms of general movement, persons may go out for work, to buy necessary food, and for exercise. Specific to air transportation, as you are aware, domestic operations have already resumed. The railway sector has also restarted. For international travel, we have made recommendations to the aviation industry to commence the process for opening international airports, provided all existing international and local prevention guidelines on COVID-19 are in place. We have modified the advice with regards to arrival for flights. Passengers arriving at the airports for domestic flights are advised to arrive at least 1.5 hours before their flight and 3 hours before international flights where these restart. For interstate travel, free movement of people and goods across state borders will continue, but only outside the curfew hours. Strict compliance is required with guidelines drawn by the Federal Ministry of Transportation, as well as the advisory provided by the Federal Road Safety Corps, as it relates to reduced occupancy for vehicles. Passengers are requested to report any public transport operator who fails to comply with the FRSC guidelines that have been agreed with major transport stakeholders. And with this particular phase, we will continue to push for the security services and enforcement agencies to make sure that they do their job of protecting public health. With regards to intrastate travel, we will continue with the policy of reduced occupancy to half for buses and a maximum of 3 passengers for normal taxis. With industry and labor, the main modification we have is an advisory for banks to limit the number of customers within their operating areas to 50% occupancy within the banking halls in order to allow for physical distancing. and to limit their workers to 75% or less. But banking operations shall continue as usual. For government offices and other corporate offices, we are now extending working hours to normal official hours from Monday to Friday, with the mandatory use of non-medical face masks. We encourage work at home policy for civil/public servants below the grade level of 12. Essential staff of grade level 12 and above may be allowed to come to work. Our previous cutoff was grade level 14. Temperature checks will be carried out in all official government buildings. For personalized services, we continue to allow personalized services such as mechanics, artisans, hair salons, etc., who own their own workshops or workstations and can clearly adhere to non-pharmaceutical interventions. We're particularly concerned about the low level of compliance with wearing face masks, and with the current extension of this phase, as I said earlier, we will be working with state authorities to start enforcing this and looking at alternative legal ways of changing behavior. For markets, no major change apart from the issue of face masks that continues to be of concern. For hotels, restaurants, and eateries, hotels may continue to remain open but must observe all mandatory non-pharmaceutical interventions. Restaurants to maintain the takeaway/delivery system until further notice. Bars, gyms, cinemas, and nightclubs remain closed until further evaluation. We have advised the National Youth Service Corps to start planning ahead of resumption in future phases, but not within this current phase of the response. We will work closely with them to design policies that may allow this to happen in the future. For community activities as it relates to daycare and primary schools, all daycare and primary schools are to remain closed till further evaluation. However, while primary schools must remain closed, registered pupils may proceed to take the National Common Entrance as soon as it is feasible, provided there is compliance with issued non-pharmaceutical guidelines. For secondary and tertiary institutions, just to clarify, these remain closed. However, we have made arrangements for exiting or graduating students in their final years of secondary school to resume and partake in exams in line with guidelines issued by the Federal Ministry of Education. However, schools must comply with the 6 recommended steps and required measures issued by the Federal Ministry of Education and which is available online. There are no new changes to places of worship. Our policy remains the same. For recreational parks/communal sports, restriction is removed on outdoor communal non-contact sports and the use of recreational parks for supervised physical exercise, not for social interactions, but supervised physical exercise. For recreational parks that are unable to enforce this, we expect them to remain closed. For outdoor non-contact sports, this includes lawn tennis, table tennis, squash, badminton, cycling, athletics, golf, polo, para-athletics, cricket, and other non-contact outdoor communal activities. In the event that people are not certain, please contact the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports for further guidance. Visiting of hospitalized patients remains limited to immediate family, and we continue to recommend a maximum of 20 people, including close family members, when it comes to attendance of funerals and other essential gatherings such as weddings that cannot be changed. So these are the main changes. Most of them are minor adjustments, and as I said earlier, we are continuing with the current phase 2 of the response. I'd like to conclude by thanking the general public for continuing to support the Presidential Task Force and the protocols that we have set up, and more importantly, for continuing to be patient with us as we get over this pandemic as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, National Coordinator. A quick reminder, please try to restrict your questions to the subject at hand, mainly the remarks of the chairman of the Presidential Task Force and the elaboration done by the National Coordinator. Please try to restrict your questions to the 2 interventions. We're now ready for the questions.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the PTF and my colleagues. My name is Mitaire Ikpe, and I report for the NTA. I want to ask the National Coordinator, how soon or how long do you expect the Ministry of Aviation to prepare for reopening of international flights? And how soon, if it is possible, to give us a date for the reopening of international flights? Thank you.
Good evening, sirs. The SGF, sir, I think I want to direct my question to you, sir. It's just on some couple of sections in your speech, sir. You talked about enforcement, and I can remember vividly that some of these extensions we've had is due to the non-compliance of some of this non-pharmaceutical order. Now that we are having another 4-week extension, what measures is being put in place to ensure strict compliance of all these guidelines that have been set out? Thank you very much.
Good evening, all. Rachel Abuja from the News Agency of Nigeria. My question is for the coordinator and the SGF, of course. Now, with the new announcement of guidelines that will take place from, that will take us to September, right? And the month that the PTF is meant to formally disband their activities. Now, going forward, how are we going to be addressing the increasing cases and all? And my next question is for the coordinator too. How effective is the use of technology for surveillance? Now, given our poor network around the country, and again, will the students that will be resuming for their final, exams, or WAEC, would they be tested? Are we looking at testing all of them? Because if we truly want to get the 2 million tests, I think we should start from the student suggestion anyway. My last question for the DG NCDC, even though you didn't say anything. Sir, what challenges have we had so far in contact tracing? Because we are now going into the community, or we are already in the community transmission. So, because I heard you once said that if we're into community transmission, it's going to be difficult to do contact tracing, and it was mentioned here. Thank you very much.
The Chairman, National Coordinator, members of the PTF, my colleagues, My name is Amaka Ude. I report for Arise News, and I have one simple question for the national coordinator, and it has to do with the banks. With this new protocol that you have just spoken about, where you're actually limiting the number of people in the banking hall, it's okay, I understand we're trying to curb a lot of people gathering in one place. But there have been concerns raised by Nigerians. Some banks, since even the easing of the lockdown, some of them, their branches are not opened. Access Bank, for one, there's just one branch of Access Bank currently functioning in Abuja. You can only imagine the kind of crowd that you see there. So this is more like a commendation, or just what can we do really to get these banks to open up more branches so we limit the number of people we have in a place at a time. Thank you.
Thank you. We are done with the questions. We'll be taking responses from the National Coordinator, the DG NCDC, the Minister of Aviation, and the SGF will round it up. So let's begin with the National Coordinator.
Thank you. So before I start with the questions, just to clarify, I have a request to clarify. So all civil and public servants on grade level 12 and above essential duties may resume normal working hours. So they are no longer going home at 2 p.m. So it's normal working hours, Monday to Friday, but from grade level 12 and above. So the first question has to do more with aviation. I'm sure the Honorable Minister of Aviation will answer it, but there may be requirements for additional infrastructure in some of the airports. What we want to do, and we've made it very clear at the PTF, is we want to open as soon as possible, but in a safe manner that does not put at risk all the efforts we've done to control this pandemic. But I'm sure the Honorable Minister of Aviation will provide additional information. Hopefully, the airports will open in weeks rather than months. That's what we are looking at. The other question has to do with what measures should we do, what should we do different in order to ensure strict compliance. So it's all about behavioral change. And behavioral change is all about modifying our risk perception and making sure that people understand what it means to catch COVID and how to protect themselves. Repeatedly, the NOI polls that we have done week to week have shown that the issue is not about knowledge. Nigerians know, virtually all Nigerians know about COVID or have heard of it. 90 to 95% of our polls show that Nigerians know how to protect themselves. But the issue is moving from knowledge to action. Behavioral change doesn't necessarily equate to enforcement, because the best way to get persons to change their behavior is to convince them that it's in their best interest to do so, or it's in the interest of their families and loved ones. The police cannot be everywhere at the same time. Having said this, we will continue to work more closely at the state level and at the community level to enforce some of these face masks, some of these measures, particularly the issue of wearing face masks, which is a simple intervention that we know can go a long way towards cutting transmission. We would also work more closely with other parts of the security services and enforcement agencies, such as road safety from the transport side and from the aviation side, and also working with other sectors of the economy. If you're not wearing a face mask, you should not be allowed access into a public building. If you're not wearing a face mask, you should not be provided with services. What happens in September for PTF? Well, we still have another 4 weeks before the next phase. So that will take us to early September. The PTF was inaugurated on the 16th of March. So 17th of March, Chairman, apologies. So we still have some time after the next phase to discuss and decide how the transition will happen. But obviously, that will be a decision by Mr. President. How effective is surveillance with the current technology we have in the country? Well, actually, in Nigeria, we are actually quite fortunate. We do have a fairly good telecommunication system, to be honest. What we don't have is access to some of the tools that have been used in other parts of the world. So, for instance, access to mapping technology, movement, data, etc. But nevertheless, the surveillance that NCDC is doing, for instance, their ability to generate results daily, every day, is no mean feat, and it's linked to the ability to use data systems that are quite robust. In addition to that, there's also the issue of additional interventions that require more close monitoring that could use technology, which we haven't got to at this stage in time. But almost certainly, technology, we have to use technology in order to get on top of the COVID pandemic. Since we don't have a vaccine, we don't have a preventive therapy, and making use of technology, especially when it relates to providing information on prevention measures or assessing compliance, will be critical. The NCDC will continue to work, I'm sure, with the NCC and other parts of the IT industry. A very good example is the move now towards people accessing their results online. You have a COVID test done, you no longer have to rely on being phoned. There's a trial going on that will allow persons to just log on. You will be given a number through your phone, and you can access your own result and print it out. But I don't think we are at a huge disadvantage as a country when it comes to technology. Start testing students before resuming. The PTF does not recommend testing of students before they resume school. A good reason is because if you do a test today and you are negative, the value of that test is at the time the sample was taken. The next day, 12 hours, 24 hours, the next day, 2 days, 3 days later, that report has no value. So our policy remains the same. Students do not need to be tested before they resume classes. What is more important is monitoring symptoms and making sure you pick symptoms up early and you exclude those that have symptoms. Limit banking hole, Amaka, so I completely agree with you. A lot of the changes we have pushed through over the last few months in terms of adjustments to the phase has to do with the need for the economy to open up. So banks, more than 2 months ago, I believe, we said banks can fully resume. What do we mean by full resumption? We don't mean that they can select the branches that they can open. We no longer have restrictions in terms of the number of branches that banks can open. All we said is we will prefer them to have 75% of their staffing capacity. And we will prefer them within the banking halls to reduce the number of people within the banking halls to not more than 50% at any time. But customers do not come to the bank and spend the whole day in a bank. They come and go. So they should be able to stagger customers to get people in. But we would strongly recommend to the banking sector to open up banks so that people can not be inconvenienced unnecessarily. This is no longer about COVID. This is all about making sure that they improve their operational efficiency. Thank you.
Chair of the Presidential Task Force, Honorable Ministers, Rachel, very quick answer to your question. I'll actually broaden out that question a little bit. In all the comments made by the chair of our task force, in all the briefings back from Mr. President, one constant has been that while some restrictions are being eased, the public health response is actually being strengthened. So today we came out of a National Council of Health meeting led by the Honorable Minister of Health with all the commissioners of health from across the country. And what we collectively agreed was, in order for our economy to open, in order for our country to restart slowly, in order for the full benefits of the ease of the restrictions that were being implemented, we on the public health side had a responsibility to strengthen our response. And so that's what we're going to do collectively. Now, going down to your specific question around contact tracing, what I said, yes, it is harder when you have community transmission, but it's not impossible. It just means we have to deploy more resources collectively. So at the moment, for instance, NCDC, we still have a team of about 40 people supporting Lagos State alone. That is because we recognize that the size of the challenge, a third of all the cases in Nigeria are still reported in Lagos, even though their cases are declining over the last few weeks. So where you have a lot of cases in the community, it's a little bit more difficult to do contact tracing, but it's not impossible. It depends on the resources that you have to focus on that. But my message really is, across the country, the public health response is actually being strengthened. And we will know we have to continue. Until we have a vaccine, there won't be a point where we say, okay, let's relax. That's completely out of the question. So the meeting we had today with the Honorable Commissioners was to really encourage ourselves, to give ourselves, the motivation to keep going, despite 6 months of really tough work. And so we will continue doing that across the public health infrastructure so that the rest of the country can at least look forward to living with COVID, so until we have a vaccine further down the line. Thank you.
Gentlemen of the media, good afternoon to you. Regarding the question as to the opening of the airports, I'd like to use this opportunity and this medium also to reiterate and to be consistent with what we've been saying out here and for people to hear and to respond to all those my friends on Twitter and other social media platforms to understand that this is not purely an aviation function. It is all to do with our health, and it's so huge that it caused Mr. President in his wisdom to set up the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. And this is universal and global. And this is in the interest of the nation and its citizens. We in civil aviation want to open like yesterday. We are bleeding. We are sacking our workers. We are not paying salaries. You must move. You must fly from one point to another to pay for the airfare, for us to make money and remain in business and pay our salaries. So we really, really want to open. But we can't open alone. Within the space where we operate, within our area of operations, we've got all kinds of people in there in the airports. You've got immigration, you've got police, you've got customs, you've got civil defense, you've got everybody in there, port health, etc., etc. So the PTF Task Force COVID-19 had set up that technical committee to come up with this date where everybody is happy to start. If it is our own, we wouldn't want to have even closed the airports anyway. We were forced by this monster to close. So we will open as soon as one of us are happy to open, and I want to adopt what the national coordinator has said. It will be in weeks rather than in months. So please do not put any blame on anybody, not on our chairman, please kindly. He's been spending all of these hours, all of his man hours on this COVID-19 task force. And you remember he's the anchor of this government and the secretary to the government of the Federation. Also, please do not put it on the Minister of Health, Ministers of Health. Please don't. And also don't put it on me. Put it on COVID-19. And that we're doing everything that we can possible to open. We feel your pain. We know that this closure of airports has separated families and friends, had denied you access to hospitals abroad, had denied you access to your schools, had denied you access to your businesses. We feel this pain. Some of us have been there, done that. We've lived abroad. We know how it feels. Some of us here also have their families out there. So it is not on purpose and punitive. No. It is that we all remain safe and healthy. And the government is conscious of, I've spoken too long.
NTA, you come.